Welcome, everybody. Live from New York to Benefit with Friends. I'm your host, Lou Bernardi. Really excited to get started. This is our first episode of the new year and only our third episode ever. So I am going to bring into the stream with me my guest today, Mark Testa from Regenexx. Here we go. Mark, are you there? Can you hear me? I think your mic's off. Hopefully you can hear me and my mic's on because my first episode, I spoke for 5 minutes with no mic on.
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
There you go. Hey, how you been?
Good, man. How are
Awesome.
you?
Good. Yeah, really excited. 2022, I made it. And so did you, obviously. So, it was a little sketchy there for a while, but I'm excited. There's a lot going on this year, I guess, in our world of benefits for sure, with all the transparency and pricing legislation, all that fun stuff. So thank you so much for agreeing to be my guest on short notice. You're on my list of people to ask, and I saw yesterday after it got posted that you clicked on it or something. I was like, oh, that's perfect. I was like,
Yeah.
Okay, that's great. So for those that don't know Mark or don't know me, my name is Lou Bernardi. I'm the founder of a benefit agency here in New York called Bright Path. Also goes under Group Planners Inc. was our original name, and our DBA Bright Path now is really kind of serves as both our strategy and our approach to benefits. I'm a 30-year industry expert, I guess. I don't know, maybe
You're an expert, Lou.
who you speak to out there. I've been doing it for quite a long time, but about 5 years ago, I really just changed my whole approach because the Affordable Care Act really changed me in many ways. I really started challenging things and questioning things that I just took as fact before, and it has brought me down a completely different path. And really excited to help employers with their the health care and health insurance needs of their employees, controlling the costs, enhancing the benefits, and there's so many ways of doing that. And Regenexx, your company, is right up there with so many great companies that maybe a lot of people, if there's people out there, I don't know, because it's a live event, but a lot of people are kind of used to the status quo, right? And a lot of companies, especially under 500 employees, are still fully insured, and they're with we call them the BUCAs, right? Blue Cross, United, Cigna, Aetna, Humana, and they pay claims, they submit claims, they don't really get any data, so they don't know what's there. And every year, lo and behold, they get their renewal, and they get single digit, double digit, probably not too many triple digit increases out there, but there probably are some actually, but hopefully not that much. But if you could give us a little bit of your background, Mark, and a little background on what Regenexx does, that'd be great.
Lou, parallel path. I'm a chiropractor and acupuncturist by training, 30 years, and I wanted to change the status quo of musculoskeletal medicine. And so the majority of that career, I integrated in with primary care, pain management, orthopedic and spine surgeons, and in hospitals. So I got to see, what goes on. And we were teammates, right? They weren't my enemies at all. We were teammates. We helped each other. They helped me. I helped them. I got to see what worked, what didn't, surgery failures. I was involved in a practice where we had 4 opioid deaths in one quarter alone. Wow. During the real heyday of Purdue Pharma. And so I was out to change a lot of that as well and bring better expand the continuum of care with healthcare, with more conservative care, because I saw people not really having access to things. And they got status quo medicine. Here's some drugs, go away. I hope you get better. Or that doesn't work. Here's some steroid shots. We'll burn the nerves. And when that doesn't work, let's go get surgery. And I took care of really too many spinal and extremity joint surgeries that didn't go well for people. So I've always been on that sort of, I believe in collaboration. And that's what we're doing here, kind of at Regenexx, expanding the continuum of care, because when those conservative measures get exhausted, people either continue to live in pain or they need to go for an elective orthopedic surgery. And now we fit in between those two poles with a still conservative treatment using the patient's own blood platelets, like PRP, platelet-rich plasma, which we might hear a lot of athletes having, or bone marrow concentrate, which is where in our bone marrow there are many cells, including mesenchymal stem cells, that can be injected into damaged tissue using image guidance and a needle to reduce the need for up to 70% of elective surgeries. And so when you keep the body whole and intact, rehab is less, downtime is less, med use is less, people get back to work and their life a lot faster. And after seeing what I saw on this side, I've been with Regenexx 12 years. I'm thrilled to see this happen here. We've been direct to consumer since 2005 on a cash basis. We've been involved in the benefits space now for about 5 years. And that's really where I've been spending the last 5 years of my time. I'll be honest with you, kicking and screaming because, I was on the short end of the stick with insurance as a provider, not getting paid, fighting for my money. I mean, shenanigans left and right. But I'll tell you, I love what I do now. And just last year in February, I took and passed in one round my Colorado insurance broker's license. And so that'll be the next step in my career at some point, not right now though, is to do kind of what you're doing. I think self-funding is the way to go. I think employers need good advisors like you and some of your peers in the Rosetta group and in other groups that can actually help them, like you said, get data, figure out where the problems are, and really address those problems head on. So that's just a quick background about myself and what's going on here at Regenexx.
No, that's great. I mean, you and I haven't spoke about this in great detail, but I'll share some information about my family. My mother has had 3 spinal fusions, and she's in her early 70s, and she's in constant pain. The surgeries that she had, which we kind of question. She was in discomfort. But I think, as you probably know, there's a lot of surgeons out there. The money is in, they make money when they do surgery. So, she had the first one and the pain didn't go away. Now, there might have been a need for it. Maybe there was enough, I guess, I'm not going to use medical terms properly, but, degeneration in her spine that she needed, a fusion. Then she got another one because when that fusion was done, the vertebrae above it started to act up.
Yep.
So she found a surgeon. There were a lot that turned her away and said, we can't do it. She had the next one, and they didn't line up the 2 fusions right. So now the normal arch in her back wasn't there. It was arching the wrong way.
Oh, man.
So now she had to find another surgeon that removed all of that was done previously and then do a third one. But none of the surgeries have relieved her of her pain. And, when people are in pain for such a long time, opioids and things like that are a real concern. So, just personally, this is something that really touches home. I saw something recently. I was trying to find it again today before our call. Maybe about a month ago, something came across, with all the information I get as an advisor and a health Rosetta advisor, especially, that only 3% of back surgeons would even consider having back surgery themselves, which
Right.
is kind of telling, right? I mean, it's just, I think people, maybe a lot of people go into it thinking it's going to relieve them of their pain.
Right. And it's not true. I mean, like in your mom's case, when the AMA comes out with a CPT code that's called adjacent segment disease, that it's a serious thing, that when you fuse, the segments above and below need to take on a lot of extra motion. And then people, it's a train of fusions. And that's never a good thing. It's funny you say 3%, because I used to take care of a lot of the physicians I worked with. Right. I'm like, oh, you do those injections and steroids and burning nerves on everybody, but you don't want them? And that is telling, right? That is very telling.
Absolutely. The proof is in the pudding. And if they're not willing to get on the table themselves, that probably means that it's not necessarily the end all be all. There's a lot of things that probably, could be done prior to. And of course, some can't be avoided. And then when that's the case, the next question is, who's the best surgeon to go to? Because not everyone who can do it gets the best results. And that's really where the the data is so important. So I would imagine that Regenexx works with almost exclusively self-insured employers, not fully insured employers, right? Because those carriers that I mentioned earlier, they're not going to allow their clients to build anything into their plan document that says, oh, well, you can go pay cash. We're okay with that. They're just not going to do it. So how closely are you working with self-insured or, employers and TPAs, and what information can they provide you with to help them identify the population within a company, that would be right for educating about what you're doing.
Right. So we've been in the self-funded space for about 5 years now. As of 2022, we just signed up 180 new employers for 1/1. We're working with over 60 TPAs, independent and larger ones like UMR and Meritain, who will adjudicate our claim. And then with 50 stop loss who support what we do. Mm-hmm. So we've carved a good niche in what we're doing. We're a national network. We're the only ones with the data, the research, 35 published papers on this work, some randomized control trials, the largest registry in the world. So we know who we can help and who we can't. I'm gonna have to put my glasses on, Louis.
This is a slide that you shared with me earlier, yeah, that you sent over, and I really liked it because if you could speak to this a little bit. I mean, there's a cost, obviously, as we mentioned, for surgery, and obviously there's a cost for what you do, but there's also the benefit to the patient, but also the benefit to the plan itself. Right. We want that person back at work. We want to eliminate ongoing therapy and medications, which can be ungodly in cost. So, I see here it says $1,000 per member per year in MS, in musculoskeletal costs. Is that the average for a group that you're working with when you look at their claims data and all of their claim spend, and you break it down to the things that are related to the musculoskeletal? It's about $1,000 per member per year on average.
So interestingly, Eric Bricker, who we all know and love here on LinkedIn, yeah, shared this. It was a study in, I think it was March 2020, that looked at costs for everything, both private and public health spending. And I think it was over a 16-year period. And they really did a good job of breaking these costs down. And he did a good job of breaking it down even further and looking at spine costs and extremity costs for musculoskeletal care. They were about even at almost $500 each. I blended them together. But that's what a self-funded employer's got baked into their plan, $1,000 per member per year. We know, at least in this study, and I'd be glad to share it, it was published in JAMA a couple years ago, 5% of the GDP, about 20% of the musculoskeletal spend. American Academy of Orthopedic Surgeons says about 3% of a plan will end up with an orthopedic surgery in a year. That's probably pretty accurate with what we see. We feel we can intervene on 70%, up to 70% of that. And so if we're getting 2% of the plan, I mean, that can save a lot of money for the plan if you don't need to have surgery, miss time. Let's not forget about rehab and all the other things, but because there's so much robust data available these days and research looking into this, not only for patient safety, which is number one, but costs, we found in a recent paper, 1 in 8 orthopedic surgeries cause a silent heart attack in people.
Oh, wow.
Now, I never even heard that. So it's amazing that they're pulling this data out. British Medical Journal published last quarter, 9 in 10 of the most common elective orthopedic surgeries did not have data that showed that it was any better than conservative care or placebo. And we're still doing these things to people. And, I can tell you from having my hands literally on thousands and thousands of patients, this stuff doesn't always work, because there was a paper in Harvard Business Review that looked at this that said 40 million Americans, working Americans, have some sort of chronic pain. So we're not really addressing it well. The current treatments, they only go so far. Everything comes with a side effect. And so we're able to intervene using the patient's own cells and a needle, and they stay intact. And they don't, most people do really, really well. And we've got all that data very transparently published on our website.
So with your treatment, then the time lost from work is also a big factor, right? And people can get back to work.
Yeah.
There's just I know as a benefits advisor, a lot of people when they're out of work, they're not collecting long-term disability. That's there's just not enough employers that are offering long-term, even short-term, and not all states. Like New York has a statutory DBL, right? So you can collect for, I think it's up to 13 weeks. It's $170 a week. So when you're talking about not knowing about this alternative, and you're in pain, right? I mean, when someone's in pain, they want to do something, right? It's very. I do know a few people that are living with pain for many, many years, and their quality of life is very low, and they want to avoid surgery. They might not even know that this exists, right? Is there what's the likelihood that their surgeon is recommending this as an alternative before the inevitable surgery potentially, right?
It's very low. It's very low.
Yeah.
Either they don't know about it. I mean, there's a lot of research to keep up on. They're not keeping up on our research, that's for sure, or the research in this. And some, I mean, look, that's how they make their living, right? So unless they have it in-house, and some do, but most don't, they're going to recommend what they do because, and I get it, that's how they make their living.
Yeah, but you know what? And I get that, right? You can't fault them for that. They're doctors. They're there. They probably feel very good about what they're doing, and hopefully a majority of them are at least adequate. And I'm sure that some that are exceptional, and the ones that are exceptional, I would argue, are the ones who don't rush to surgery, right? They want to explore every other alternative before surgery.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that there are some doctors that I would hope that there'd be some doctors that say, hey, there's this thing, I'd like you to try it first, especially if they're self-insured and they find out that it's something that's possible under the plan. I guess, for a self-insured employer, so we're, as a Health Rosetta advisor, our goal, our ultimate, on our top of our wish list is working with an independent TPA.
Yeah.
Right. With case management that's aligned with the employer and the members, not hired by the insurance company just to rubber stamp things like, in and out. Okay, good. Move on. So case management, I would imagine, interacts with you guys quite a bit where they say, hey, anybody on the road to surgery, we want to make sure that they get some outreach proactively and say, you need to know about this because do you have any idea? Maybe you do, of the people that interact with you, that reach out to Regenexx, that have a surgery in their near future potentially. How many of them actually explore the Regenexx route as an alternative to surgery, like right off the bat?
So as far as employers, so I literally just got done doing a patient education webinar. So we do everything to educate the employer and the employees. We do benefit cards so they know about it. We do educational webinars because people want to know, like anybody else, where to get the cells, how do they work, what can you help me, what does my benefit cover? So we do our best to educate that way. We do work with care coordination to some degree in some plans. As you know, not everyone has it. We do have good relationships with TPAs, independent TPAs, and even bigger ones like UMR and Meritain, who will allow us to do targeted outreach. And so just like in practice, right? You've on your third Synvisc injection, you're on your third epidural in the spine, and you're not getting any better. That's a pretty good telegraph of what's coming next. And so we reach out. We'll do it ourselves and educate the members and just invite them to a webinar so that they can get educated. And then the next step is to, talk to a doctor and find out if we can help you. Because I mentioned 70%. So it's not everybody, but we will carry the water. And there's no extra cost for that because otherwise, you know how it is. You go to your primary care doc and he's going to refer you to the surgeon. It's his buddy. They golf. Look, I practiced with these guys. This is how medicine works. It's very local. We know each other. But the good thing about when I was in practice, and most doctors, we know who to refer to and who not. Right. And that's, I think, also, you mentioned early on the quality of the surgeons. I wish patients had better access to the quality metrics that I know you and I can see through some other vendors. Because
Yeah.
man, when I look at those, I'm like, holy cow, you are no good.
Well, over the last over the 30 years, things have changed dramatically. I'm actually in the process of writing a book about, so I think it's important. There's a lot of benefit decision makers today that weren't around prior to managed care, so they don't remember, that type of health plan, right? But what's really changed over the last 25 years is the healthcare systems, the hospital systems, right? Because almost everything was independent before, right? When
Right.
in the early days of managed care, networks were just starting to be built by insurance companies. They would just, say, hey, do you want to sign up so you can have access to our members? And because they represented 1 million members and that hospital wanted access, they were true discounts back in the day. Doctors were independent, so who cared if the doctor had to sign that contract no matter what? But the insurance company had all the leverage. Then the hospital systems and the providers and the specialists and the facilities said, hey, without leverage ourselves, we're never going to get more money out of these insurance companies. Right. Because before MLR of the, without getting into a lot of details, insurance companies made more money when they paid less in theory, right? They didn't have to refund it back then. Right. So now you have these hospital systems that are just ginormous. And the biggest key to the whole thing is they own the doctors now. The doctor doesn't, if you're working for ABC healthcare system that has 30 hospitals, right? You're an employee of that hospital system now. They're paying you to see patients and they tell you where to send them. They don't want those doctors to discuss this alternative because they want those people in those beds, because the facilities are making all the money. The doctors aren't, I'm sure surgeons are probably doing better than primary care doctors, right? I mean, they're just getting crushed. And I talk to people all the time and let them know there's a revolution happening in the US behind the scenes of managed care, right? The private equity groups and the people at the top in the boardrooms, they're doing great. Doctors aren't doing so, great in lots of different areas. So, but information is key, right? So those independent TPAs are just going to be able to provide the data that allows an advisor like me and an employer ultimately to say, hey, wow, look at these claims within our plan.
Yeah.
We need to bring in a company like Regenexx, or maybe we need to bring in a diabetes company that specializes in diabetes. The most important thing is to make sure that those members are adhering to their care, right? I don't know if that's as big a thing in musculoskeletal as it is in other areas, but if you're diabetic and you're not taking your medication, or if you have a heart condition and you're not taking all your medications because you can't afford the prescription copays,
right,
or those HSA, those high deductible health plans that so many people have, is that something that contributes to musculoskeletal at the end of the day, because people just aren't getting the care they need? So it compounds and compounds and compounds. Could you avoid that surgery beyond what Regenexx does, I guess, as a patient?
Yeah, I mean, it's a ubiquitous problem, right? Inflammation, systemic inflammation that most Americans have. It's involved in, systemic inflammation drives diabetes, dementia, cardiovascular disease, and osteoarthritis. You don't control that with Advil or anything like that. It's a lifestyle and diet thing. So, if primary care, which I think should be the quarterback of all care coordination, really direct primary care, they know their patients, they know where they need to go. I practiced in that setting forever. The primary care doc controlled who saw who and when they got the MRI, which surgeon were they going to use, when were they going to try conservative care. It wasn't just a shotgunned approach. It was very methodical. And so primary care can really, like you're saying, help people manage their diabetes to the point, or blood pressure, or things where they can actually go out and exercise. Now, it's also the other side of that coin. Some people in musculoskeletal pain can't go out and exercise to control those things, and taking care of those metabolic conditions will only go so far because the joint has deteriorated to a degree that it's not going to repair itself by itself. And so it's sort of a push-pull, but I think the person in the middle really should be direct primary care, who knows what's going on with people and overseeing things rather than just letting people run loose with their
Right.
plan. Like when I got out of school, PPOs and HMOs were just coming around and they were punitive, they were restrictive on, and that was a bad way to manage care. But if a physician is managing care, that's a good way to manage care because then they can control where people are going. They can control the metabolic processes. Because look, man, we're all holistic. Your knee is related to your metabolic problem as well. So you can't just address one without addressing the other.
As we're standing here, I'm like, oh, I don't know if you see, I'm like, my back, my neck, I'm standing. For New Year's, I bought one of the desks that raises. Yep. I have this silly bowl chair to strengthen my abs. None of it's working, but I'm only 2 weeks into it. But I'll be 55 this year, and things start to go.
And that's the other thing.
I need to lose 30 pounds. There's no question.
Exercise is like the elixir. If it came in a pill and we could give it to everyone, I mean, they would be better for almost everything. And exercise is something that we just don't do enough of.
Yeah.
And so, it's sort of somewhat it's not going to work for everyone, but counterintuitive that, I'm in pain. If I exercise, I'll be in pain. But I would stick my neck out and say people in pain, about 50% of them would feel better physically if they exercised.
Oh yeah, there's no question. I mean, weight has, I'm sure, a lot to do with musculoskeletal, right?
Absolutely.
The knees, the ankles. I have heel spurs, and when I know it, like I can tell when I get to a certain pound, my feet, it starts to feel. I guess the arch in my foot just from my gravity doing what it's going to do.
Right.
So you mentioned direct primary care, and that's something that again, fully insured employers, they don't even know what we're talking about. Like, what is that, right? So that's an example of one of those things. When I say there's a revolution happening, because doctors had no choice but I hate to say sell out, but to join the hospital system, right? That health plan, because signing that document alleviated some administrative burden on them, right? Some costs on them, and also they get paid more because now they're part of a healthcare system that's doing the negotiating for them. They get an immediate raise, but the hours, they're not working for themselves. They have a boss now.
Yeah.
And I think, I don't talk to a lot of doctors. I'd love to. Here in New York, there's one direct primary care doctor on Long Island. I've emailed her, I'm not going to say her name on the air. I've emailed her about 6 times. She's probably like, what does this guy want? Why is a benefit broker calling me? Right. And, I've left her some voicemails. I've left her some emails. I'm going to get through to her. I'm going to try to have her on my show this year. And then there's a lot of, hybrid, right? So I've talked to a lot of companies that are building direct primary care. In some parts of the country, they're huge. I mean, when I go to open enrollment and I ask every time I go, how many people have a primary care doctor?
What is
less than 10% of the people have a primary care doctor. That means that there's nobody looking over. I mean, everybody goes to urgent care. Here on Long Island, there's an urgent care. I could probably throw a rock in 5 directions and hit one.
Same here in Denver, right in my neighborhood.
I mean, it's insane. And they're great. They serve a purpose.
Yeah. But
they don't know you, right? They don't know you. They don't know what's going on with you, in every aspect, right? So, I mean, that's something that I think 5 years from now, the whole climate of healthcare is going to change very differently. I think the value of health insurance carriers is changing dramatically because I think that they've proven that they don't bring a lot of value. What are they doing to help? When you look up the definition, and if you go to some of the websites of some of the carriers, it's to improve the health of their members. And I just don't see it. I don't see that they're doing any of that. I think they're bringing a lot of health to their stock prices,
right?
Potentially, and I don't blast them. It's we live in a capitalism, but I think they could do so much more. They have the data that you mentioned before. That data is there, but they won't let the customer see it.
Yeah,
and that's why it's so important to work with an aligned TPA, someone who says that the data is yours, and we're not only going to give it to you, we're going to help you identify components of your health plan where we can really make a an impact on the quality of life of your members. Not only control the costs, reduce the claim spend, but increase the quality of life for your employees. I think that's really, really key. So we're coming up on about 35 minutes now. I mentioned to you when you agreed to come on today, which I'm so happy. This has been great. Is there any kind of takeaway that you can recommend if there's an HR director out there or benefit decision maker or C-suite, and you say, hey, this is doable. I mean, this seems very foreign to a lot of people. It's not that complicated, right? Once you put the plan together, it runs like a clock. But are there some takeaways that you can give to say, hey, maybe this is where you should start?
I think the starting point is with an advisor like you, who's got experience in self-funding, who's got a blueprint like Rosetta's put together, so you know where you're going. You've got peers that you obviously interact with. You know a lot of the vendors and independent TPAs, and so you can build that plan, right? And that's like triage number one, right? If you're bleeding to death, we're not going to, deal with your ingrown toenail. We're going to deal with your bleeding problem. Sure. And a lot of employers with fully funded plans are bleeding and have no idea where. Right. And so number one, finding a really good advisor like you and self-funded advisors who can build that plan and that it can be done, right? This is not foreign. It's being done. I have a client in New Jersey he's been self-funded for 30 years, which I didn't even know it went back that far.
It does. It does.
Yeah, he knows what's up, who he's dealing with, what the costs are, how to control it. They brought in, and I'm not suggesting this, in-house clinic for their 5,000 employees. They know everybody. So step number one. And then step number two is finding the right solution providers. Like, right. Where are you bleeding? Do you need that diabetes thing? Do you have a lot of musculoskeletal costs that you can control? And then I think direct primary care really should be baked into all these plans with somebody who's at the helm. And then, care coordination or nurse case managers. Like, yeah. I mean, we didn't do anything. I did a lot of work comp here in Colorado. We didn't do anything. Well, primary care ran it, but case managers controlled costs. Right. And they didn't delay things necessarily, but there's stop gaps. So when people hear self-funded, they think they're just going to be shelling out. You're already shelling out now with no control, with no throttle. At least when you're self-funded, you've got the controls in your hands, and you've got a consultant and like you, who's got his finger, her finger on the pulse of what are the right solutions for you. So I know that's more than a few takeaways, but as I look at it and working with consultants like you, the best ones I see, that's kind of what they built into their plans, and they do get control. And you see those costs literally in the first year or two come right down. And then pharmacy, that is the biggest, craziest. When I learned about that and the rebates, I was like, what? The employer pays but doesn't get their money back when there's a rebate? I mean, I think pharmacy is another big thing that, somebody like you can get your arms around and help people save literally from day one.
It's funny, and thank you, because, as an advisor, that's great. But, we're not doing, when I talk to an employer, hopefully the team, right, the C-suite and the HR director, I asked them, have you ever been self-insured? It's actually a shame. And I think that there's some really good advisors out there, maybe some I'm connected with. And if they see this, there's got to be a better term for it. Because if you self-insured 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, or as you mentioned, 30 years ago, you didn't self-insure the way it's done today, right? The technology, technology has changed everything.
Yeah.
What I think is really even more important is that it's not more work for the employer. It's no different for their members. What's different is the proactive concierge type approach, right? The data, there's a few things like pharmacy. I agree 100%. If you're with the right TPA and the right pharmacy benefit manager, you're going to reduce your pharmacy spend by 20 to 50%. We just moved an account. We identified a 53% overspend in pharmacy, $360,000, something like that, because there were rebates over $200,000 that were going to the carrier that now goes to them. and then all the other opportunities to save with the copay assistance and international delivery, things like that. You know, that's automatic, right? That's a guaranteed savings. And then once you start getting the data, that's when you look for solutions like yours, right? You don't plug Regenexx in day one necessarily. I mean, you could probably, but if you don't know what's there, it might not make sense, right? So you don't want to overdo it. Like you can bring diabetes and musculoskeletal and dialysis and specialty medication and all these other. There's so many pieces. The important thing is that they smoothly fit into the plan document. Case management understands them all, and you're working with the TPA that to me is like the orchestra leader, right?
Yeah.
You can put great musicians in a room and say play, and it's going to sound like garbage. But if you have the right conductor and you have the sheets, it's going to sound beautiful, right? It's like nothing you've ever heard before. So that's the way I look at it. You know, I like to think of the plans we're building today for employers. So excited for some of the results for some of our clients that have allowed us to do this. And, you know, so many other conversations where they're ready. You know, COVID, unfortunately, stopped a lot of the plans for some employers. They just had to stop what they were doing because there were so many other things HR is involved with, you know, remote work, things like that, especially here in New York. We got hit so hard and still such a thing. But 2022 has so much promise. I'm so happy you joined me again. Thank you so much. This was great. If you're out there and connect with Mark on LinkedIn, this is great. If you're out there and you're looking for a different way of looking at it, you know, I'm here. I'm on LinkedIn as well. Health Rosetta, you mentioned, aspirational healthcare. There's so many different organizations that I'm part of where people are doing great things. So I want to thank you. Have a great day. Have an unbelievable. I hope your growth this year is even better than last year. You know, so
thanks, Lou.
Really appreciate. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Doing your great work. You're helping the whole ecosystem.
Thank you.
All right.
Sounds great. Thank you so much.
Take care.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.